Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever stopped to think about how often life just, well, throws us off balance, challenges everything we thought we knew about ourselves, maybe even the people closest to us? Sometimes that really deep self-discovery, it doesn't happen on some grand adventure. It's more in the quiet, unexpected moments, isn't it?
That's absolutely right, and that's exactly what we're digging into today. Our mission, really, is to take a close look at Carol Shields' fantastic novel, The Box Garden. It's just brilliant at showing the ordinary become extraordinary. We're going to be exploring it through the eyes of the main character, Charleen Forrest, looking at her very unique, sometimes kind of unsettling journey, her relationships, those moments that just pop up and change how she sees courage, identity, even human connection itself. We're pulling this straight from the book, lots of great excerpts that really give us a window straight into Charlene's head.
Yeah, so this deep dive, it's not just, picking apart a novel for the sake of it. It's about finding those universal truths hidden in this really personal story. How does someone, one woman, deal with feeling fundamentally, well, unbrave in a world that's always pushing for resilience? And maybe what can her story teach you about finding that little spark, that kernel of indestructibility inside yourself? Okay, so right from the start, Charlene lays it out pretty clearly, doesn't she? This profound certainty, she says, I will never be brave. That's quite a statement to make about yourself. How do you see that playing out right away, like in her everyday interactions, dealing with a bank teller, or just feeling, I don't know, swamped by basic stuff?
Oh, it's incredibly striking. That opening line just sets the whole tone for her inner world. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how she internalizes it. This lack of courage isn't just a feeling for her. She sees something like kindness not as natural,
Mm.
but as this alien quality, like learning a difficult French verb. She says something you have to learn slowly, painfully, and imperfectly.
Hmm.
It just shows how deeply our self-perception can warp even basic human things, right? What's easy for others becomes this huge struggle for her.
And it's not just abstract, is it? It's physical, too. The way she describes her own feet, scaly, big, ugly slabs, corns she's had since she was 13. This constant feeling of being a fatal quarter step behind the rest of the world. Like she's always just missing the beat. Does that relentless self-criticism kind of get in the way of her connecting with who she is? Especially being a poet, but feeling more like a clerk.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of being out of sync, yeah, it creates this huge gap between her inner self, the poet, and her day-to-day reality. And you have to wonder, if you truly believe you're unbrave or always a quarter step behind, how much does that belief itself stop you? Stop you from, owning your talents or even seeing your own kindnesses. It's almost like a self-fulfilling thing until something really shakes it up.
Right, that makes sense. And her inner world is so clearly tied to her past. So, how much of this self view, this feeling of being behind, can we trace back to her family, especially her mother, Florence McNinn, and her sister Judith, that whole life in the Scarborough bungalow?
Oh, the mother is definitely a central figure, huge impact. She ran the household with this tidal wave of judgment and literally hundreds of strict rules like cash on the line and cash on time.
Hmm?
Charlene even describes her love as primitive, scalding, shorn of kindness. She talks about her hair being yanked when her mother brushed it. That kind of upbringing, so rigid, seemingly lacking warmth, it really leaves a mark on your sense of self, your ability to trust.
And then there's that really fascinating detail, the mother obsession with decorating. For like a quarter century, constantly doing over rooms, this incredibly meticulous, almost Baroque taste. Velvet curtains, throw cushions, everything just so. Charlene notes it wasn't about money. It was about taste, yes, but also maybe filling a terrible hurting void. It feels like she's trying to control something, right? Trying to make the outside perfect to fix an inner emptiness.
It's such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? Redecorating endlessly to manage inner turmoil
Yeah.
and connecting that to later life. Her transformation is pretty striking, too. She used to worry constantly what the neighbors would think, especially after Charlene ran off with Watson. But later on, the old neighbors are gone, and she just stops caring. It's like this quiet, maybe unacknowledged victory over that lifelong anxiety. Or maybe, like you said, a kind of giving up, where what others think just doesn't register anymore.
That's interesting. It could be both triumph and resignation. And then there's Judith, the sister, the survivor, Charlene calls her. Seems like she navigated that sour river of their childhood with seeming immunity. Successful biographer, practical, good with the mother. Very different from Charlene.
Judith definitely seems to represent a different outcome, a different way of coping. But despite those differences, there's clearly a strong bond there. They share this manic mirth, as Charlene puts it, that's perilously close to weeping. And Judith has this uncanny knack for seeing the missing links in Charlene's life, the things Charlene tries to gloss over. It really speaks to how shared history, even a tough one, can create this deep, unspoken understanding, a kind of shorthand between them.
So yeah, whether it's overt rules or just the unspoken stuff, family legacies really shape us. It makes you think, what happens in your own life when those foundations start to shift or even crumble? Speaking of shifts, let's talk about the men in Charlene's life. Starting with Watson, her ex-husband. She calls him a psychic disaster, a man without a center. What was he like? What kind of impact did he have?
Watson is, oh well, he's fascinating. A study in constant change, really shedding his skin like an actor, as the book says. He goes from botany student to Arctic lichen expert, then suddenly he's championing common pigweed because, specialty was for those who are content to stand still.
Yeah.
Then he's a brilliant young lecturer, a rebellious young intellectual, and finally, he becomes Brother Adam, this sort of monastic figure. His story suggests that, for some people, identity isn't fixed. It's this restless, ongoing reinvention.
Yeah, that breakdown at 30 sounds pretty intense. He fell apart, wanted to walk across Europe playing a recorder he couldn't even play. It definitely points to that volatility. But then he leaves post-dated child support checks for their son, Seth, including a final $5,000 one. That's a surprisingly responsible move from someone who seemed to want to just disappear from his past. A real contradiction.
It is a huge contradiction, and it's really insightful. It shows how even people who seem the most disconnected or flighty can still hold on to some deep, maybe unacknowledged sense of duty. And the big reveal, of course, is finding out that Brother Adam, the guy Charlene's been writing to, is actually Watson, his room at the Priory, filled with mirrors. It hints at this terrible need for an audience, even in solitude he's performing. And that tight farewell note, remember, there will be other lives, other worlds. It's so typically Watson. Detached, a bit grand, but ultimately not very helpful.
Okay, so then we have Eugene, her current boyfriend, an orthodontist, described as just nice, polite, good-natured. Seems like the complete opposite of Watson.
Pretty much, yeah. And his past really shaped him, too. His ex-wife, Jerry, was this angry, angry woman, obsessed with consumer complaints, mailing a wasp and jam to the government, returning broken cookies, just constant conflict. Eugene talks about his daydreams of her just being content. It really shows his deep desire for peace, for, quiet after all that chaos. It's a powerful example of how past relationships can totally redefine what you want now.
And it sounds like Charlene and Eugene kind of bond over their exes, this conspiracy, as she calls it, to reduce our two partners to ranting maniacs so they can feel innocent and free. What does that shared storytelling reveal about where they are emotionally? It's like they're rewriting their own history together, isn't it?
Exactly. That shared narrative, that conspiracy, it lets them process the trauma, maybe distance themselves from the pain, and justify where they are now. It's a very human way to cope, really. Constructing a story that protects your current self, your current relationship, even if it's, a slightly edited version of events. And crucially, Eugene's kindness feels natural. Unlike Charlene's, which she feels she has to learn. He's just gentle, offers support, emotional and financial, which, interestingly, often makes Charlene uncomfortable. It kind of challenges her whole idea of shattered independence. She's not quite ready for things to be soft and easy.
That's a great contrast, the innate versus the learned kindness. So it really makes you think, how do all the people who come and go in our lives and the stories we spin about them shape our own sense of self-worth, our own feeling of freedom? It feels like a constant negotiation. Okay, so things seem maybe tentatively stable with Eugene, but then, bam, the structure just shatters when her son Seth disappears with Greta Savage, a family friend. That must be the ultimate test for someone who feels unbrave.
It absolutely is. And it plunges Charlene into this flooding despair, naturally. But kind of paradoxically, it also seems to bring some clarity. Greta herself is a complex character, these blinding pinpricks of virtue mixed with a wily unaccountability. The thinking is she took Seth because she kind of idolized Watson, maybe wanted a kid, and thought she could take Seth to Watson. Her rounding, which is their word for losing touch with reality, is linked, interestingly, to overdoing meditation.
Yeah.
It's a really unique take on how things can unravel.
And then Seth comes back, and it's surprisingly normal, almost anticlimactic. He says it was kind of fun, like a wish come true, that maybe his parents would get back together, which leads to that amazing moment where Charlene finds him sleeping on her mother's sacred Chesterfield, the sofa no one, not even her dad, was ever allowed to rest on. That feels like a huge symbolic shift, like an old family rule just broke.
It really is huge, symbolically. The simple, almost mundane way Seth describes it, compared to Charlene's sheer panic and unreality, it just highlights how resolution can come from the most unexpected places, like a kid's straightforward wish. And yeah, Seth on that sofa, it signals a definite shift in those rigid family dynamics, a softening of the old rules. And this whole crisis, it pushes Charleen too. She ends up defending Greta's actions, calling it an act of love. And in that moment, she says she felt very close to being the person she would like to be. She actually steps into a kind of courage there.
And just when you think things might settle, another unexpected person enters. Louis Berceau, her mother's fiancé, met at the cancer clinic.
Right, Louis? He seems really humble at first glance, gnarled, peanut face, this alarming cough, but underneath there's this deep, simple kindness. And the big surprise, he's an ex-priest, left the church because he got sick. So like Watson, he's another man who has shed his skin, but heading in a totally different direction, towards acceptance and gentle connection, not that restless searching Watson had. It just reinforces that theme in the novel. People are complex, they have hidden layers, hidden pasts.
Which leads to that incredible scene. Charleen, not knowing who Brother Adam really is, invites Watson to her mother's wedding to Louis. Talk about bringing all the pieces of her fragmented life together. The wedding day sounds like this amazing mix of tenderness, awkwardness, humor, all these different worlds colliding.
It's the ultimate convergence, isn't it? All these threads coming together. And in that same spirit of reaching out, Charleen gives her own poetry books to her mother as a wedding gift. Her mother, who's never read her work, isn't even interested. It's such a symbolic gesture, though, a really poignant, maybe desperate attempt to bridge that lifelong gap. Even if the gesture lands with the thud of a grocery cashier's indifference when her mom tries to return them later, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the meaning is in the giving, not the receiving.
That's a really wonderful point. It makes you think, how often do the most chaotic times actually open doors to connections we never expected? And what do we learn about ourselves when we try to understand, maybe even forgive? So we've walked through Charleen Forrest's really intricate world. We've seen her wrestle with defining herself, seen how outside events force these huge internal shifts. She fights that feeling of cowardice, that McNinn syndrome, but in the end she seems to find this kernel of indestructibility. Happiness can come back, even if it's, not constant.
Yeah, the novel, through her perspective, really suggests that true understanding isn't on the surface. It's not in the easy answers. It's in all those contradictions, isn't it? Watson's weird mix of foresight and escapism, the mother's obsessive decorating hiding that terrible hurting void, Charleen's learned kindness versus Eugene's easy generosity. Shields pushes us to look beyond the obvious.
Maybe the real deep dive then is into the unreality, the complexities of our own lives. What unreality in your life, if you really looked at it, might hold the deepest insights?
That's a great question. Maybe think about the hidden stories in your own family, the different versions, the incarnations of people you know, how tiny moments can carry so much weight. What are the gifts without words, as Shields might put it, that you've received? And what do they end up revealing about you?